My name is Martha Green, and I'm 79 years old. I've lived a full life, raised 3 children, survived cancer, taught Sunday school for 30 years, and buried the only man I've ever loved. His name was Harold. We were married for 53 years. When he passed, I thought the hardest part of my life had just ended. But I was wrong. The hardest part came after the funeral. 3 days after laying Harold to rest, his family, his brother's children, his niece, and even his cousin Roger, descended like vultures. They said things like, "Let's help Grandma settle in," and "We'll take care of you." But what they really meant was, "Let's take everything." I remember it vividly. That morning I had just made tea in my kitchen in the home Harold and I built together, when Roger came in with a clipboard. "We've spoken as a family," he said, not even looking me in the eyes. "And we think it's best you take the basement for now. Safer. Fewer stairs. You know, at your age." Before I could answer, 2 of the nephews started carrying my boxes downstairs. My teacup rattled on the saucer. "But this is my home," I whispered, voice trembling. Roger chuckled. "It was Harold's home. And he's gone." My knees buckled. But they didn't catch me. They moved me into the cold basement that same day. Concrete walls, no windows, a cot instead of a bed. No one asked me. They just took the bedroom upstairs and began moving Harold's things into boxes. Jewelry, books, documents, all gone before I could blink. They had no idea what I still had. 2 days later, I opened the hidden drawer in Harold's old desk. My hands trembled as I pulled out the envelope. Inside was the original power of attorney, signed and notarized, giving me full authority over all Harold's assets, including the house. Smiled. Not out of bitterness, but because they had no idea what they'd just done. And now they were going to learn. But before I made a move, I decided to wait. And listen. What I overheard next from the top of the basement stairs made my blood run cold. "Once we get the title transferred, we can sell the house and put her in a home." They didn't know I could hear them. They didn't know I had the power to stop them. They didn't know I wasn't as weak as I looked. But what they were planning next, that was only the beginning. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to hear what Martha does next. Next chapter is coming, and trust me, you won't believe what happens when she finally fights back. I didn't sleep that night. The basement was damp, and the thin cot creaked every time I shifted. But it wasn't the cold that kept me awake. It was the echo of their voices. Roger, Cynthia, Blake, whispering above me, plotting like snakes. "Just wait a week or 2, let the lawyer handle the probate quietly," Roger had said. "And what about her?" Cynthia's voice cut through the air like glass. "You heard her wheezing. She's frail. She'll probably pass in her sleep soon. Let's just be patient." Frail. I scoffed into the silence. I might be nearing 80, but I had fought bigger battles than this family of vipers. Breast cancer didn't take me. Harold's death didn't break me. And a bunch of greedy relatives sure weren't going to finish the job. Still, I needed a plan. In the morning, I boiled water on the hot plate they had left me like I was a stray cat they fed out of pity. I brewed my tea, careful not to make a sound, and returned to Harold's old filing cabinet. Everything was still there. The deed to the house in both our names, the will, updated just 6 months before he died, and the notarized power of attorney. They thought Harold didn't trust me. But they didn't know my husband. We were quiet people, but we were always prepared. I folded the documents carefully and tucked them into a brown envelope, placing it inside the lining of my handbag. If anyone came snooping, they'd only find my Bible, my reading glasses, and my old cross-stitch kit. After breakfast, or rather after the dry toast Cynthia tossed down the stairs without a word, I did something that none of them expected. I smiled and kept quiet. You see, silence is power when used right. And when you're underestimated, that's your sharpest weapon. Over the next few days, I learned their routine. Roger worked from home, some shady real estate consulting job, probably how he thought he could maneuver the house sale quickly. Cynthia spent most of her time on the phone with friends, bragging about upgrading to a better suite in Grandma's house. Blake. He was just a freeloading 20-something who smoked in the backyard and made TikToks. They didn't see me. Not really. That's when I made my first move. I waited until they all left for lunch one afternoon. Roger was showing a house, Cynthia was out shopping, and Blake was off somewhere playing entrepreneur. I climbed the stairs, slow but steady, heart thudding like a war drum. I walked into my own bedroom, my room, and looked around at how they had rearranged everything. Cynthia's bags were on my dresser. Roger had tossed some paperwork on my nightstand. I went straight to the top drawer and took back my jewelry box. It had been passed down from my mother, and her mother before her. Inside were the earrings Harold gave me on our 50th anniversary. No one touches those but me. Then I went to the hall closet and found the emergency phone I kept hidden behind an old sewing basket. It still had charge. Smiled. I dialed the number of Harold's lawyer, Mr. Alvin Booker. Good man. Quiet but sharp. Mrs. Green, he answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call. I think it's time we talk, I said, gripping the receiver tight. They're trying to sell the house. They've moved me to the basement. Long pause. Come in tomorrow morning, he said. I'll have everything ready. Bring the documents. I still have them, I said. Of course you do, he replied. Harold always said you were the strong one. When I hung up, I looked around one last time. I didn't take anything else. I just went back to the basement with my bag clutched tight. Let them think I was still their little secret. The next morning I waited until they were distracted. Roger yelling into the phone, Cynthia fussing with her fake lashes, Blake blasting music, and I walked right out the front door. Took the bus. Alvin was waiting for me at his office with a pot of coffee and an understanding smile. Once we file this, he said, gesturing to the power of attorney in Harold's will, any attempt they make to transfer or sell the property without your approval will be blocked. And if they try to evict me? Yes. He chuckled. You're the legal owner now. Let them explain why they're living in your house. I left that office with my back straight, my shoulders squared. For the first time in weeks I felt like myself again. But when I returned home, something had changed. My things in the basement. Scattered. My cot overturned. My handbag rifled through. And taped to the wall. A note in Blake's messy handwriting. We know you're up to something, oldie lady. Don't push us. I stood there in the silence of that cold basement, clutching the note. They were on to me. But they still didn't know what I was capable of. If you're loving Grandma Martha's quiet fight, don't miss the next chapter. It's about to get even darker. Like, comment, and subscribe to follow the rest of the story. You won't believe what she does next. I stood still for a long time, staring at the note Blake had taped to the wall of the basement like it was some kind of threat that would make me curl into myself and give up. We know you're up to something, oldie lady. Don't push us. Imagine that, being called old lady in your own home, by a boy who couldn't boil rice without setting off the smoke alarm. But it wasn't just the words. It was what they meant. They had searched my things. They were no longer content with shoving me into a corner. They were afraid now, and fear makes people dangerous. I picked up the bag they'd rummaged through. Thankfully, I hadn't brought the originals to Mr. Booker's office. I only carried copies that day. The real documents, the will, the power of attorney, and the home deed, were now safely locked away in his care. Still, the invasion made my skin crawl. They were willing to go low. But I knew how to go quiet. That night, I didn't eat the dinner Cynthia tossed down the stairs. Something felt off. I trusted my gut. After all, that gut had raised 3 children and survived chemotherapy. I wrapped the food in old newspaper and waited until everyone went to bed. Then I crept outside to the trash bin. When I opened the paper, I wasn't shocked to find little blue shavings. Crushed pills. I couldn't tell what they were, but I knew one thing. It wasn't salt or seasoning. They wanted me weak. Forget waiting for me to pass in my sleep. They were accelerating the process. I walked back to the basement, hands trembling. I sat on the cot and breathed slow, steady. I would not let them see me break. In the morning, I called Mr. Booker from the payphone at the corner store. They tried to drug me, I whispered. I'm sure of it. He was quiet for a beat. Then, Mrs. Green, I'm calling the sheriff. Today. I shook my head. Not yet. You have the legal upper hand. Yes, I said slowly. But they have the illusion. And I need to shatter it completely. He didn't understand, but he respected me. That's why I trusted him. I spent that day pretending to be slower than I was. I walked hunched over, rubbed my temple, pretended to lose my balance on the stairs. I let Cynthia feel smug when she said, "You should stay down there, Mom. You're just not strong enough for all the noise upstairs." I smiled and nodded. But behind her, I saw Roger packing papers into his briefcase. Papers with the county clerk's seal on them. I'd seen enough real estate filings in my time with Harold to recognize a property transfer form. He was trying to take the house. I returned to the basement and wrote everything down. Dates, times, their actions, even what was in the shredded food. Then I waited for the right moment. Came 2 days later. Cynthia threw a small dinner party. Just a few friends from her church group. The kind who wore big hats and bigger egos. I heard them laughing upstairs, sipping wine from my wedding glasses, sitting in Harold's chair like it was theirs. I took the hidden key from behind the old paneling in the basement. Harold and I had installed that little trick after we were robbed 20 years ago. I unlocked the old dumbwaiter hatch, the one that went up behind the pantry wall, and carefully climbed into the shaft with a recorder in my hand. I couldn't see much, but I could hear everything. Roger bragging, Cynthia gossiping, Blake laughing like a fool. But then I heard something that made my blood boil. "She's losing it," Cynthia said, chewing loudly. "We'll just have her declared mentally unfit. That way the court will sign the house over without a fight." One of the women laughed. "Are you sure she doesn't know?" Roger spoke then. "Even if she does, we've already filed papers. It's just a matter of days." "Then what?" "Then we move her to a facility. She won't even remember where the house was." I slipped back down the dumbwaiter in silence. I had enough. The next morning, I dressed in my best Sunday coat and called Mr. Booker. "It's time." He met me at the courthouse. By noon, we had filed a formal injunction blocking any transfer of the property. By 3 p.m., a sheriff's deputy was knocking on my front door. My door. Serving Roger a court order to cease all activity on the house and appear in court within 10 days. You should have seen their faces. Cynthia screamed. Blake stammered. Roger turned pale as flour. And me. I stood behind the deputy with my back straight and my coat buttoned up to the neck. Cynthia gasped. "How? What are you doing up here?" "I live here," I said. "More than I can say for you." The deputy handed her a copy of the injunction. "You have no authority over this property, ma'am. Mrs. Green is the legal power of attorney and surviving joint owner." She looked at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. "This must be a mistake." "No mistake," I said. "And you have 10 days to get your things in order. Because when that court date comes, I won't be the one in the basement anymore." But what happened next? It wasn't a quiet retreat. It was war. Because Roger wasn't going to let the house go easily. And what he did that night changed everything. Don't miss the next chapter. It's where things explode. Literally. If you're following Grandma Martha's battle for justice, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't seen her strongest move yet. The banging started around midnight. I was drifting to sleep in the basement. Yes, I still stayed there even after the injunction. Not because I had to, but because I wanted them to think I was still cornered. Still helpless. But I wasn't. Not anymore. The sound shook me fully awake. Heavy thuds, followed by glass breaking. I slipped into my shoes and grabbed the flashlight. As I climbed the stairs, heart in my throat, I heard Blake's voice yelling, "Just take the damn safe and let's go." I froze behind the kitchen wall, peeking into the living room through the crack. 2 masked men. One tall, one short. Dressed in all black. They had busted open my grandfather clock, the one with the false back. The safe was behind it, bolted to the floor. Only Harold and I knew it was there. I backed down the stairs slowly and quietly dialed 911. Then I called Mr. Booker on the second phone he gave me, just in case. The police arrived in under 5 minutes. But by then, the men were gone, leaving behind a crowbar and a muddy trail of footprints. The safe had been yanked halfway out of the floor. It was too heavy for them to finish the job. The officer, a kind young man named Deputy Walker, turned to me. "Do you have any idea who might have known that safe was there, ma'am?" I looked him in the eye and said, "Only family." By the time Roger and Cynthia got home, lights were flashing and officers were combing the house. Roger shouted, "What the hell happened?" Deputy Walker calmly explained the attempted burglary and asked where they had been. Cynthia said they were at dinner, oddly nervous, even stuttering. Roger was sweating. But the kicker: Blake walked in through the back door 10 minutes later, mud on his shoes and panic in his eyes. The deputy noticed. "Sir, can you tell us where you were between midnight and now?" Blake stammered. I was at Trevor's, watching the game." "Trevor?" the deputy asked. "Phone number." Blake gave it. The officer stepped outside to verify. Cynthia pulled Blake aside and hissed at him through gritted teeth. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. "I told you not to involve your idiot friends. Now we're screwed." That was it. I gave Deputy Walker permission to check the house's security footage, the one Harold and I had installed years ago, hidden behind a mirror in the hall. I had reactivated it quietly after the food poisoning attempt. It recorded everything. 10 minutes later, the footage was pulled. Clear as day. Blake unlocking the back door. 2 men entering. Roger's voice in the background on a phone call. "The safe is behind the grandfather clock. You'll know it when you see it." The deputy didn't need more. Blake and Roger were cuffed on the spot. Cynthia collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. "You don't understand. That safe has bonds and money we need. She's going to throw us out." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The police escorted them out in silence. I watched through the window as the flashing lights disappeared into the night. But Cynthia remained. Roger and Blake were facing charges. She wasn't arrested, but she was alone now. And I wasn't sure which was worse for her. The next morning she knocked on the basement door. "Yes," said calm and cold. I didn't know they were going to rob the place," she muttered. "I just wanted to talk. Maybe we can coexist." I stared at her for a long moment. "This house has one owner now. Gave you space. Gave you grace. You gave me betrayal. You need to leave." Tears welled in her eyes. "Please. I have nowhere to go." But I had seen that act before. "I'll give you 48 hours, I said. "That's more than you gave me." She left in silence. I sat on the front porch for the first time in months, wrapped in Harold's old cardigan, sipping my tea. For a moment, the peace felt too good to be true. Until the mail arrived. In the stack was a single white envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo of me standing at the courthouse. On the back, someone had written in red ink, "You won this round. But this isn't over." I looked around. Someone was still watching. And they weren't done yet. Grandma Martha's fight isn't finished. Someone's lurking in the shadows. What secret are they holding? Find out in the next chapter. If this story has your heart racing, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You'll want to stay for what's coming next. I sat still for a long time, holding that photograph in my lap. My fingers trembled, not from fear but from rage. I wasn't afraid of whoever sent it. I was angry they thought I still could be. The image was grainy but clear enough. Me, stepping down the courthouse steps with Mr. Booker beside me. The angle suggested distance, maybe from a parked car across the street. And that note, "You won this round. But this isn't over." They weren't bluffing. Someone was still out there. Someone still had something to lose. I didn't know whether it was Roger's shady friends, a leftover piece of Cynthia's broken plan, or someone new altogether. But one thing was certain. I couldn't afford to let my guard down. The next day I had the locks changed on every door. Not just replaced, reinforced. Deadbolts, slide locks, even motion sensor lights at the front and back. I wasn't going to live in fear. Not in my own home. I also called Mr. Booker and told him about the envelope. "You think it's one of the relatives?" he asked. "I think it's someone worse," I replied. "Someone who wasn't in the light before, but now has something to hide." He sighed. "Mrs. Green, maybe you should stay somewhere else until this is sorted." "No," I said firmly. "If I leave now, I tell them they've won." He didn't argue. He knew better. Later that evening, I took out Harold's old notebook. It was a thick, leather-bound journal he kept hidden in the lining of his closet wall, where he wrote names, deals, old loans, debts owed and debts forgiven. Harold didn't believe in digital records. He trusted pen and paper. I flipped through the pages, and that's when I saw it. Roger's name. And next to it a $42,000 loan. No repayment date. No record of return. And below that, two names I didn't recognize. Rickon and Dare. In parentheses. "Handle with caution. If anything happens to me, tell Martha not to trust them." My breath caught. Harold had known something was off. Why hadn't he told me? I took the notebook to Mr. Booker the next day. He examined the names and turned pale. "I know those men," he said quietly. "They're not from around here, but they've been part of dirty land acquisition deals across the county. If Roger owed them money, they'd come for the house." He nodded gravely. "This house is your last tie to your husband's legacy. If they can't get it legally, they may try something else." I didn't need him to finish the thought. That night I heard tires screech outside. I peered through the curtains and saw a black car idling at the edge of my driveway. The windows were tinted. No one stepped out. Just the soft glow of a cigarette ember from the driver's side. Butching. I didn't sleep. But I did prepare. I called the sheriff's office and requested patrol for the next few nights. I also reached out to my neighbor, Hank, the retired Marine who never minded carrying a shotgun when coyotes came too close. "Hank," I said, "I may need a friend to watch my fence line." He didn't ask questions. Just nodded and said, "I'll be there at dusk." 3 nights passed. The car came and went. Always silent. Always watching. On the 4th night, the basement light flickered. That's when I smelled smoke. I rushed downstairs and there it was. Fire. Small but intentional. A pile of old newspapers had been lit in the corner, under the breaker panel. I grabbed the extinguisher and sprayed until my arms shook. Hank burst through the back door moments later. His flashlight scanning every shadow. No one. They were gone. Sheriff Walker came immediately after and confirmed what I already knew. It was arson. "They were trying to send a message," he said. "They already did," I replied. "But now I'm sending mine." The next morning I sat down with Mr. Booker and made a public declaration of ownership, filed with the county, recorded in the paper, and posted to every legal board within a 50-mile radius. I made sure there was no shadow left for these people to crawl into. I was the owner. Any attempt to access, purchase, or manipulate the property without my consent would be met with full legal force. Cynthia moved in with a cousin in another state. Roger and Blake, still facing charges. But this was bigger than family. This was about Harold's legacy, my safety, my dignity, and I wasn't going to let fear rule the rest of my life. But that night, something new arrived. On the doorstep, small brown package. No return address. Inside, wrapped in brown butcher paper, was a rusted revolver. And a note. "Use it. Before we do. Someone wants Grandma Martha gone. And now it's not just about property. It's about survival. Don't miss the next chapter, where her quiet resistance turns into full-on war." Like, comment, and subscribe to keep following this jaw-dropping fight for justice. The weight of that revolver in my hands was heavier than just metal and rust. It was history. A warning. A threat that came not in whispers this time, but in steel. I stared at it on the kitchen table for what felt like hours. The note still beside it. Use it. Before we do. They were no longer trying to scare me into leaving. They were daring me to stay. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I placed the revolver gently back into the paper, sealed it in a plastic bag, and called Deputy Walker. He came with gloves, photographed everything, and sent the package straight to forensics. "They're escalating," he said, eyes flicking toward my kitchen window. "You have to understand, Mrs. Green. This is no longer just about property. Someone's looking to harm you." "I know," I said, my voice even. "But I'm not going anywhere." He sighed. "Then let us set up surveillance. Full audio and video. Do it." By that evening, tiny cameras were hidden in the porch lights, in the hallway, and even in a potted plant near the back door. They connected to a live feed monitored at the station and on my television screen. But peace. That didn't come easy. The next night I heard it, rustling near the basement window. I peeked at the monitor and saw a shadow move across the bottom of the screen. Then a loud crash. I rushed to the hallway, heart pounding, and saw broken glass where the window used to be. But no one had entered. They just wanted me to know they could. They were testing my fear. And still I didn't move. In the morning I found another envelope taped to the mailbox. This one had no note, just a single photo. It was of Harold, dead in his casket, zoomed in, intimate, and on the back, smear of red ink, or maybe blood. That was it. That was their game. Psychological warfare. But they didn't know I'd lived through worse. When Harold was dying, I fed him through a tube. I changed him, bathed him, read to him when his eyes wouldn't open. I watched the love of my life fade in front of me and never gave up. What did they think a broken window would do? Later that day, I called Mr. Booker and said, "I'm ready." "For what?" "To use the power they're afraid I have." And I did. That week, with the help of my lawyer and Sheriff Walker's office, I filed a civil restraining order against any known or unknown individual attempting to threaten, harass, or intimidate the legal property owner. That included Cynthia, Roger, Blake, and any associate they had ever communicated with concerning the house. I also filed for probate closure, declaring the estate legally sealed and inviolable. Then I made a bold move. I put up a sign in front of the house that read, "Property protected by legal force and surveillance. Owner Martha Green. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Justice is watching." I wanted whoever was driving by in that black car to see it. I wanted whoever was sending envelopes to feel it in their bones. That night, the car didn't show, but something else did. A young man, maybe early 30s, came to my door in a denim jacket. He didn't look like a criminal, but pain sat behind his eyes. He held out a small box. I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't know." Blinked. "Didn't know what?" "That they were trying to hurt you. I was just paid to take pictures. That's all." My heart tightened. "You sent the courthouse photo." He nodded. "They said it was just insurance. Just to make sure you'd stay quiet. I didn't know they'd threaten you." I stepped aside and let him in. His name was Corey, a freelance photographer. Used to work with Roger. Said Roger owed him money and threatened him too. "I don't want to be involved anymore," he said. "I came to return this." He placed a USB stick on my kitchen table. "It's everything. Pictures, emails, transactions." He swallowed hard. "There's a man named Dare. He's the one who hired the guys that broke in. He's dangerous. Real dangerous." I nodded slowly. "Will you testify?" "Yes." Corey hesitated. "If I disappear, check the old photos folder. The password is justice. That's all I can promise." Then he left. Into the night. Like a shadow returning to the dark. I handed the USB to Sheriff Walker that same hour. He left in a rush, not even finishing his coffee. That weekend I packed my things. Not to run but to rebuild. The surveillance stayed. So did the deputies. But I moved myself back into the master bedroom upstairs. I dusted Harold's photo, lit a candle beside it and whispered, "I'm home, sweetheart." The war wasn't over, but I was standing in the center of it now. No longer hiding, no longer waiting. But then, just when I thought it was settling, a brick came flying through the window at dawn. Attached to it, new message. Get out now or next time it won't be just glass. Martha just stepped into the line of fire, but she's not stepping back. If you're still with her in this fight for legacy and survival, don't miss the next chapter. Like, comment, and subscribe because things are about to explode. The sound of shattering glass is something you don't forget. It's loud, violent, and final, like the end of peace. The brick crashed through the living room window just as the sun crested the edge of the earth, spilling morning light onto broken shards and the message it carried. Get out now or next time I won't be just glass. I didn't scream. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, barefoot in my robe, staring at the brick like it was a guest who'd arrived early and rude. I bent slowly, picked up the note, and read it again. Whoever this was, they were escalating. Yes, this wasn't just about revenge. This was about power. They couldn't stand that an old woman had outmaneuvered them. And now they wanted me gone or gone for good. But the thing about me, I don't break easy. The sheriff's deputies were at my house within 15 minutes. Deputy Walker took the brick and bagged it as evidence. Another deputy photographed the damage while I quietly swept up the glass. Ma'am, Walker said gently, this isn't just intimidation anymore. This is criminal threat. With that note and what we have on the USB stick from Corey, we can officially launch an arrest warrant. For Dare and maybe more. And Roger. Yes. Already facing conspiracy to commit burglary, he said. But this connects him to even more. We're close, Mrs. Green. Real close. That same morning I got a call from Mr. Booker. We got something from the USB Corey gave us, he said. An email chain. Between Dare, Roger, and someone named Jackson. Froze. Jackson. Yes, he continued. He was Harold's business partner once, right? My heart dropped. Jackson Duval. He wasn't just Harold's former friend. He was the one Harold cut off after he tried to forge signatures on a land deal years ago. They hadn't spoken in over a decade. He's back. Yes. Apparently. And he's behind this whole push to acquire your house. Roger was just the pawn. The real plan was always to scare you out, forge a quick sell document, and flip the property for a massive payday. How much are we talking? Yes. 3 million, Booker said. Developers want this land. Beachfront adjacent, near the new bypass. That house is sitting on gold. I sat down slowly. They weren't just trying to kick out an old lady. They were trying to erase me, quietly, legally, and permanently, for a fortune. But they'd forgotten one thing. Harold had trusted me for a reason. I told Booker to do whatever it took to move forward with charges. I didn't care about being quiet anymore. I was ready to roar. That afternoon the media arrived. The local news station rolled up with a reporter named Sandra. I'd gone to church with her grandmother. She interviewed me on my porch, camera rolling. I lived here for 52 years, I told the lens. I buried my husband here. I raised my children here. And now, a group of men think they can threaten me into giving it up for a real estate deal. Well, not on my watch. The story aired that evening. My phone rang off the hook. Friends. Church members. Old students from the Sunday school I used to teach. Even the mayor's assistant called, offering support. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I was a face on the screen. Symbol. That night I didn't sleep much. I stared out the window waiting. The black car didn't come. But a drone did. It hovered near my bedroom window. Silent, sleek, flashing a green light as it filmed. I stepped into the light and stared straight into it. You're not invisible, I whispered. And I'm not afraid. Then I grabbed my walking stick and swung. One crack. Plastic and wires fell like rain. Walker picked up the pieces in the morning. This is military-grade tech, he said. Someone's got deep pockets. But that wasn't the scariest part. Later that afternoon, The sheriff's office received an anonymous tip that a body had been found near the bay, wrapped in plastic, weighted down with stones. 'Twas Corey, shot once in the head. Execution style. I couldn't breathe when I heard the news. He was trying to do the right thing. And they killed him for it. That changed everything. Now it wasn't just my home at stake. Someone had died trying to protect me. I met with Walker and Booker that night and signed off on a full federal investigation. Booker had connections at the state level. Within 48 hours, the FBI was involved. Dare's name was on more than just emails. There were wire transfers, shell companies, contracts, and Jackson Duvall. He was behind 6 similar acquisitions in the last 10 years, 2 with mysterious house fires involved. But now, they'd finally picked the wrong woman. The law was closing in fast and hard. But before they could make a move, I got another message. This time on my front porch in the form of a dead pigeon, its wings painted red. And in its beak, a rolled-up photo of Corey's face, eyes open, lifeless. And beneath it, in cut-out magazine letters, "You're next, Martha." Martha's war just turned deadly. With Corey gone and new threats looming, justice is racing against time. Will she survive what's coming in the next chapter? Like, comment, and subscribe now. This is far from over. I didn't scream when I saw the dead pigeon on my porch. I didn't even flinch when I read the message clutched in its beak. "You're next, Martha." I just stood there, the wind brushing against my robe, holding Corey's photo with trembling fingers and a heart full of rage. They had already killed an innocent man. Now they wanted to finish the job. But I wasn't going to die quietly. Not in the home my Harold built. Not before making every last one of them answer for what they did. I called Deputy Walker before I even stepped back inside. "Bag the bird," I said into the phone. "Fingerprints. Anything." He showed up less than 15 minutes later, this time with federal agents in tow. The FBI had taken over the investigation now. I could see it in the way they moved. Quiet, professional, armed with more than just pistols and good intentions. An agent named Ramirez stepped forward. Middle-age, clear eyes, innocence. "Mrs. Green," he said, "we believe your life is in immediate danger. These people aren't amateurs. They've silenced witnesses before." "I'm not just a witness," I replied. "I'm the target." He nodded. "That makes you the most important one." They offered to move me to a safe house that same night. But I refused. I'd made it clear. I would not be driven out of my home. So they compromised. They set up an unmarked SUV at the edge of my driveway, full surveillance gear inside. 2 armed agents rotated on shifts in a camper van parked down the street, pretending to be tourists. Another pair took up station in my attic, quiet as shadows. I was living in a fortress now. But it wasn't safety I wanted. It was justice. And it came faster than I thought. That evening, Agent Ramirez knocked on my bedroom door, holding a file with rubber gloves. "We analyzed the pigeon," he said, laying out the evidence on my kitchen table. On the bird's wings. Synthetic red dye. The same brand used in a local poultry plant where Dare had done consulting work. And inside the rolled-up paper, partial fingerprints, belonging to Jackson Duvall. That was the thread they needed. With a USB drive from Corey, the financial records from Booker, and now DNA evidence tying Jackson to a direct threat, the federal warrant was issued. They raided Jackson's penthouse the next morning. Inside, guns, fake passports, burner phones, and one very damning piece of evidence. A black notebook detailing every property he'd acquired illegally, including mine. He'd even written a chilling note under the listing for my address. "Old woman equals weak link. Push harder." They arrested him on the spot. But Dare was still missing. He had gone underground. No phone signals. No bank activity. But I knew he wasn't gone for good. Because the next night, I woke up to the sound of my power shutting off. The fan stopped spinning. The lights blinked out. And in the pitch dark of the hallway, I heard a floorboard creak. froze. The agents in the attic were silent. No movement. No backup. That's when I knew. Dare was in the house. I reached for my nightstand drawer, grabbed the emergency flashlight, and flicked it on just as I stepped into the hallway. That's when I saw him. Hooded. Holding something metal in his hand. "Leave," I said. He didn't speak. He just smiled. "I've taken down every one of your little friends," I said, my voice low but firm. "Jackson's gone. Roger's in jail. Cynthia ran off to Idaho like a dog with its tail between its legs." Still he said nothing. "I'm not the one who's afraid anymore," I whispered. "You are." He took one step forward. But then, bang! A light flashed from the ceiling. Agent Ramirez, dropping down from the attic, tackled him like a thunderbolt. Within seconds, the hall lit up with red and blue as backup swarmed in. Dare was cuffed, screaming. "You think this is over?" he shouted as they dragged him out. "You think you win?" I stepped forward. "No," I said softly. "I already won." The house was silent again after they took him. No creaking floors. No black cars. No threats on the porch. But I knew the storm wasn't over yet. Because when the FBI interrogated Dare, he said one thing before asking for a lawyer. "She's not the one I wanted." It was never about her. It was about what her husband left behind. When they searched Dare's storage unit the next day, they found it. Hidden safe. Locked tight. Inside. A second set of Harold's documents. Letters. Schematics. Blueprints. And a map. One that pointed to something buried under my land. Something Harold never told me. The land we lived on was more valuable than we ever knew. And someone else still wanted it. Harold's secret has just been unearthed. And it changes everything. Don't miss the next chapter, where Martha uncovers the shocking truth her husband died protecting. Like, comment, and subscribe. We're almost at the end, but the biggest twist is still coming. I sat at the kitchen table, Harold's old reading glasses in my hands, staring at the unfolded map the FBI had pulled from Dare's hidden safe. The paper was yellowed at the edges, creased like it had been folded and hidden away for decades. But what shocked me the most wasn't just the red X marked on the northeast side of our property. It was the name scribbled next to it in Harold's handwriting. Salt Ridge Tunnel. Surveyed 1968. Do not share. I blinked hard, whispering his name under my breath. "Harold, what did you find?" Agent Ramirez sat across from me, the map spread between us. "This area," he said, pointing to the red X, "matches the part of your property right near the bluff, where the old willow tree sits." I nodded slowly. "That tree's been there since Harold's father owned the land. Mrs. Green, we believe there's a decommissioned military tunnel system under there. Or possibly an abandoned salt mine. Harold's notes reference mineral surveys and undisclosed rights." My heart dropped. All this time I thought they were after the house. But they weren't just after the house. They were after what lay beneath it. That's why Dare and Jackson were so desperate. That's why they were willing to kill. To manipulate. To dig literally into my life. I sat in silence for a long time until Agent Ramirez said gently, "With your permission, we'd like to excavate the area. If it's what we think it is, it could be federally protected land. You might be sitting on a historic site. Or something even more valuable." He nodded. "Do what you need to do. But keep me involved. Every step." 2 days later, a crew from the U.S. Geological Survey arrived. They brought in ground-penetrating radar and scanning equipment. My backyard turned into a full-blown dig site. I watched from the porch in my cardigan and slippers, coffee in hand, heart heavy with curiosity and grief. Then on the third day they found it. 10 feet below the surface, right where the willow's roots thinned out, the radar hit something hollow. They unearthed a steel door, rusted but intact, with faded letters that read, U.S. Gov Property, 1953. A forgotten bunker. Tunnel system. Agent Ramirez looked at me and said, "Your husband knew. He was trying to protect it." They opened the hatch carefully. Inside. Darkness. air that hadn't been breathed in over half a century. The first room contained maps, empty crates, and strange machinery. Some labeled, surveying equipment, classified. But the second room, that one held crates of untouched minerals. Raw salt, yes, but also veins of rare earth elements. The kind used in electronics, energy weapons, satellites. Ramirez turned to me, jaw slack. This could be worth millions. I stepped inside that cold bunker and looked around. In the corner, still standing after all those years, was a rusted locker. On the front, someone had scratched into the metal. For Martha. If they ever come. My knees nearly gave out. With gloved hands, I opened the locker. Inside was a leather-bound journal. Harold's handwriting filled the first page. My love, if you're reading this, it means they came for what we tried to keep buried. This land holds more than earth. It holds secrets, power, danger. I didn't tell you because I didn't want our life to become a target. But I always knew you were the strongest of us. If you found this, protect it. Use your voice. And never let them win. I clutched the journal to my chest and sobbed. All this time, Harold had been protecting something greater than either of us could have imagined. He didn't just build a home. He shielded a legacy. And I had spent the last weeks fighting a war I didn't even realize was bigger than family betrayal. Now I was the last guardian of something the government had forgotten, and criminals tried to steal. 2 days later, federal agents returned with a contract. They wanted to lease the land, for excavation, historical preservation, and full government oversight. The terms: a 10-year renewable contract, a monthly payout of $45,000, and full ownership retained by me. I signed without hesitation. But the story didn't end there. Because when the news broke, people came crawling out of every corner. Lawyers claiming Jackson had rights. Investors waving old fake deeds. Even one man who said he was Harold's hidden son trying to claim a stake. But this time, I had everything I needed. Documents, evidence, surveillance, and the law. One by one they were shut down. Arrested. Exposed. The final blow came when a state attorney announced formal charges against Duval, Dare, and their network, including tax fraud, conspiracy, property theft, and accessory to murder. Corey's name wasn't forgotten. A public memorial was held in town square. I attended, holding a photo of him in one hand and Harold's journal in the other. As I laid a white rose by his framed picture, I whispered, "Thank you." The town, once quiet and unknowing, rallied behind me. And then something happened I never expected. The mayor called. He offered to name the entire property, bunker and all, after me. The Martha Green Preserve. I declined. It should be named after Harold, I said. He's the one who kept it safe. Instead, we named it Green Legacy Grounds. Place for history. For truth. For strength in silence. Now, months later, I sit in my restored living room, windows sealed, walls reinforced, a fresh coat of paint brightening the air. I make my coffee in peace. The basement is empty. The threats are gone. But the war made me something I didn't know I could still be at this age. A warrior. But as I sip my tea and read Harold's last words again, one thing keeps me up at night. There was a third name in that journal. One that hasn't shown up yet. One that Harold underlined with red ink. M. Bradford. Final backup plan. In case they fail. Who was Bradford? Where was he? And what exactly was the backup plan? Because just when I thought the storm had passed, I looked out my window and saw a black car I didn't recognize parked across the street. And the driver was watching me, smiling. Harold's secrets still have layers, and Martha's not done yet. Next chapter is the explosive finale. Like, comment, and subscribe now because the past is about to catch up. The black car didn't leave. Not that night. Not the next morning. It sat there like a shadow stitched into the street, engine off, windows dark. Watching. Waiting. I had seen enough threats to know this wasn't random. This wasn't a neighbor's visitor. This was a message. I stood at the curtain, Harold's journal in my hand, my eyes fixed on the figure in the driver's seat. The silhouette never moved. But I saw the glint of something in their lap. Something metallic. Agent Ramirez arrived within the hour, along with 2 FBI vehicles. By the time they approached the car, it was empty. No footprints in the grass. No license plate. Just a folded paper left on the driver's seat. They handed it to me carefully. It read, "M. Bradford always finishes the job." My heart sank. That name again. The one Harold had written in red ink. His final warning. Who was this Bradford? And what job did he need to finish? The agent started an immediate trace. Security footage, city cameras, DMV records. But whoever Bradford was, he wasn't in any system. No one by that name had shown up in association with Dare, Duval, or even the mineral rights. But Harold knew him. That much was clear. And then something clicked. I remembered a letter Harold once got during his final months. He'd looked at it for a long time, then burned it in the fireplace. All he said was, "Some debts never die, no matter how deep you bury them." I thought it was poetic back then. Now I realized it was a prophecy. I returned to Harold's journal and flipped to the back. Taped to the final page was a thin strip of yellowed film. When I held it to the light, I saw it was a photograph. 3 men. Standing in front of a mine shaft. One was Harold. The second was Duval. The third. His face was mostly in shadow. But underneath it, in Harold's handwriting, Bradford. The trigger. Never trust him. I showed it to Agent Ramirez. He whistled. This goes deeper than property and minerals. This is legacy espionage. Cold War secrets. Hidden infrastructure. What does he want from me? Asked. Ramirez paused. Not you. Not directly. But if Harold left something behind, something more than that bunker, you might still be in possession of it. And Bradford wants it. I stared at the walls of my home. The wooden beams Harold had sanded by hand. The floorboards we'd danced on one last time after his diagnosis. What could still be here? The answer came that night. A storm rolled in around midnight, shaking the windows and rattling the porch swing. Lightning lit up the house in flashes, and I couldn't sleep. So I walked the hallway, Harold's cane in hand. Not because I needed it, but because I liked how it felt. That's when I noticed the picture frame in the hallway. Our wedding photo, slightly crooked. I reached to straighten it and heard a soft click. The wall panel behind it moved. My heart froze. I pulled it open slowly. Behind it, hollow cavity. Inside, a locked steel box bolted into the studs. No key. No dial. Just a slot the size of a thumbprint. I blinked. Was it biometric? I ran my fingers across the surface. Then I remembered something Harold used to do. Press his wedding ring into the wood when he prayed. I fetched the ring from the memory shelf, slid it on my thumb, and pressed it into the indentation. Click. The box popped open. Inside. Flash drive. 1 piece of paper. And a single bullet. Unfired, polished, and etched with the initials MB. The paper was a letter. Written in Harold's fading hand. Martha, if they found you, then Bradford is alive. He'll want this drive. Do not give it to anyone. Not even the FBI. This contains coordinates to a second site. A vault beneath the bluff. I left this out of the map intentionally. Too dangerous. If you're reading this, burn this letter. Keep the bullet. You'll know when to use it. I clutched the flash drive like it was gold. Harold had hidden another vault. And only I could find it. I didn't call Ramirez. Not yet. This was something Harold wanted me to handle alone. I left the house before dawn, flashlight and cane in hand, and made my way to the bluff. The wind howled like ghosts were circling the rocks. There, buried beneath years of moss and time, I found the hatch. Rusty. Covered in vines. I pried it open with a crowbar. And climbed down. Inside was a single concrete chamber. Sealed, silent. And at the center, black trunk. Took me nearly an hour to unbolt it. When I did, I gasped. Inside were files. Handwritten notes. Photographs from the 1960s and 70s, some with government stamps on them. Top secret energy projects. Discontinued weapons programs. A photo of Harold at a nuclear testing site. This wasn't about minerals. This was about power. Real power. And Bradford. He wasn't after money. He was after control. I packed the files and drive in my backpack and climbed back out, only to find a man standing at the top of the bluff. Gray-haired. Cold eyes. "Hello, Martha," he said. It was him. Bradford. "I see Harold chose well," he continued. "You're smarter than you look." I didn't answer. He took a step forward. "Hand me the drive." I took a step back. He raised something in his hand. A gun. But so did I. Harold's revolver. Loaded with his bullet. The one with Bradford's initials on it. Aimed it with both hands. "You want this," said. "You'll get it the same way Corey did." He laughed. "You won't pull it." But I already had. Bang. The shot rang across the cliffside like thunder. Bradford dropped. Cold. By the time Agent Ramirez and his team arrived, I was already seated on a rock, the drive on my lap. "He was going to kill me," I said simply. Ramirez nodded, eyes wide. "You did what your husband never could." I handed him the files, minus the letter. That I burned. Just like Harold asked. The story hit national headlines. 79-year-old widow uncovers decades-old government secret, ends legacy of corruption. But for me, it wasn't about the fame. It was about peace. 6 months later, the land was declared a protected federal site. Kept the house. Kept the journal. And every night, I light a candle by Harold's picture. "Thank you," I whisper, "for trusting me." And now, I sit on my porch, rocking gently, tea in hand. And I smile when I see the tourists come by to read the plaque out front. This land was protected by Martha Green, widow, warrior, and keeper of truth. Let no one forget what one woman can do when she decides she will not be moved. If this story moved you, showed you the strength of quiet power, and reminded you that no one is ever too old to fight for what's right, like, comment, and subscribe. Your story matters too.